What's up, guys? Dave again here at the Blind Spot. Really excited about this episode. Again, and somebody I've never met before, and I'm grateful that I have a guest, Matt Marcus from. He's the owner of King's Tattoo out of different cities, and I'll let him get to that. Matt, thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. When Virginia, who is my, I call her my brand manager or whatever she wants, she gets to pick her own title. So she reached out and she said, I've got this friend, Matt. He's got all these tattoo shops and he's doing all these other things during these, COVID-19 pandemic. And I thought, perfect guy, because I love me and my tattoos, and guys that own tattoo shops are always fun to chat with. So again, thanks for joining me.
Sure.
Give us a little bit of background.
So I am the owner of Three Kings Tattoo. I've had it in Brooklyn. I've co-owned it with one of my best friends, Alex McWatt. We've owned the main location in Brooklyn for 13 years. We also have a location in Manhattan, Long Island. We recently opened in LA and London. We own 3 bars in Brooklyn. Me and my wife have 2 restaurants. I own a liquor company, a liquor store, various other endeavors and investments. So, I like to have my hands in a lot of different cookie jars. Three Kings is definitely, where my heart is and where most of my time gets invested.
Got it. Cool. So let's just start. We're going to start from the top. Three Kings.
Okay.
Obviously, I could tell before we even started recording, obviously you're tatted up also. So were you always into tattoos, or were you always an artist? Give me a little bit of background on that.
I was always an artist. I had done fine art all growing up. Got into street art, graffiti art. I did a bunch of acting when I was a kid. Really all encompassing the arts when I was a kid. And funny enough, I didn't actually want to go to college. I ended up going to film school at SUNY Purchase, which is in Westchester. Okay. And I'd actually tried to fake my parents out when it came to college, because I applied to all these programs that were really hard to get into, hoping that I just didn't get into any of them. I didn't have to go. And at the time, Purchase was one of the biggest film programs in the country. They accept only 20 kids a year out of thousands of applicants. So I applied and ended up getting in. So I said, fuck it. I guess I'll go. I'll see what it's about.
Right.
So I ended up doing the film conservatory for a year, dropped out of that, went back to fine arts, started hanging out with lots of guys who were older than me and kind of into tattooing. And this was, the early 2000s. So it was really blowing up then. I think Tattoo TV had kind of come, just a few years after that with Miami Ink. I had befriended some of those guys, in New York as mentors of mine. So, that scene was kind of blowing up and getting big. So there was a lot of appeal to it. So I continued to do fine arts and did kind of like a formal apprenticeship kind of, and it went from there.
So you started in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah. I after Purchase, so I actually graduated school in 3 years, and then I ended up in Brooklyn. My last year I was commuting to school because I only had classes 2 days a week. So I was doing that, and I started working within the tattoo industry, working for a supply company on Canal Street called Unimax. Okay. And I started getting heavily tattooed. So I met a bunch of tattooers and started picking things up and here and there. And funny enough, that was when I met my partner, Alex McWatt, who mentored me and kind of taught me and helped me get my first couple jobs. And then we opened Three Kings in 2008.
And after you opened your first location, when did you decide, okay, you know what, we're starting to see, that we needed a second location? How much time, what made you make that decision?
Man, that's such a combination of so many things. A lot of it was really, I think, where I was at personally in my life at the time. I had a liver transplant about a year and a half into the business being open. And my sickness had gotten to the point where I wasn't actually even supposed to live. Will was written, papers was signed, that was that. Last minute, a guy had a heart attack in Boston. It ended up being a match. I was #1 on the country for like weeks for a liver transplant. People had come, said their goodbyes, all the guys from the shop and stuff. Got the transplant last minute, would sneak off and do physical therapy for myself at night because I just wanted to get back to my life and back to work. And really, I think like after that experience, which, makes sense, having an experience like that, was really when I think when I came back from that, I was like, sky's the limit,
Yeah.
And it kind of opened up all these doors in my mind to possibilities and seeing our industry, which, at the time was still a very young industry. People don't realize that tattooing was illegal in New York up until 1996. So, at 2008, you're talking about an industry that's only 12 years old. And I saw a lot of potential. So, I came up with a bunch of things that other shops weren't doing. And I kind of applied all these modern business practices to running a tattoo shop. And a lot of them worked.
Right.
We got busier and busier, and we got more notoriety. And as we got busier, and as more people at the time wanted to come work at the shop, it just seemed like it made sense to expand. So there was a shop going out of business in Manhattan. This was about seven years ago now.
Okay.
And the owner had come to me and wanted to see if I was interested. So I took it over and I kept some of the artists from there. Some of them are still with me now today. And, brought in some new guys. And then that shop grew. And we moved to another location a couple blocks away because we needed more room.
Okay.
And throughout the years, we had just, we'd become the shop that was working with Nike and Adidas and Adult Swim and Rag & Bone. And we were doing all these Sailor Jerry events. And we were, traveling and working for record companies. And event tattooing had become this big thing that big businesses had, kind of got, got in together and just started having people come and tattoo at these events. And the name would spread and spread more. And as it spread, I think after our first year, as far as the financial parts of it go, we had made going into it, we knew nothing about running a business.
Right.
All of my business knowledge, I'll say loosely, came from street knowledge. And we'll end it at that. But,
yeah, you and me both, dude. Don't worry.
But we had made some sales tax mistakes in our first year.
Yeah.
And after that, I take being I hate the word boss, but I'm going to use it. I hate being I really like seeing my businesses as families, and I really care about the people who work with me and alongside of me. If you care and you want any kind of real success, I think you learn pretty early on that you can't do it by yourself. And you need teams of people. And in the beginning, you filter through, because once you attain some success, there's no shortage of people who want to be involved and come, but very few of them want to work as hard as you're working.
Yeah.
So after making that mistake our first year, it cost us like $50,000. At the time, $50,000 was a lot of money for us,
Yeah.
I spent a couple years paying it off. We'd gone to court for it, and it was a whole headache. And I said, all right, well, I'm never going to let this happen to me again.
Right.
So I looked up, I think it was CUNY. I looked up basically like their accounting 101 for like freshman year. Like went to Barnes & Noble. I bought a bunch of like accounting books, and I just started figuring out stuff for myself. And that was kind of like, before my transplant, that was really where the ball started rolling in my head of understanding finances and capitalism and, how the system it will work for you if you educate yourself and put yourself to work for it. But if you don't, you're just going to live your life at its mercy.
Right.
So, I educated myself financially. And then after my transplant, it became very important to me that the people who worked with me, I did my best to make sure that they were getting the same kind of education so that they could put their money to work for them. And this is when, we started taking on opportunities like the bars and the liquor company And me and my partner, we never left New York. And that's the thing about New York. It's a transient city, so people come and go
every day.
And we always believed that the best way to build something was just to sit still and build it and invest in the community and become a part of that community. There were years early on where they would joke and call me the mayor of Greenpoint, just because I was always around and I was always on the street. And, in owning a business, you meet contractors, electricians, plumbers, you build this giant network and web of people.
Right.
And, so many of those relationships ended up just being doors that opened for me. I always tell people I didn't actively plan to get to this point in my life. I just walked through the doors of opportunity as they came to me. Dude, I had no fear. I'm not worried about losing money. I don't see I've lost businesses. I've had to close places. I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I learned very early on that none of that defines me. Right. You just get up, you try again, that's it. And obviously the liver transplant and being close to death and having that, that only solidifies that mentality, which was the mentality I had before I was a business owner. I've been working since I was 10 years old. I come from a working class family. My old man had me busting my ass in warehouses at 12 years old, doing 12-hour days in tin roof warehouses in Union City, in the summertime. No air conditioning, just killing yourself, And I had every shit job there was growing up, because I grew up in a house where money was always a point of contention. And my father would always say, it's a lot more important to know what you don't want to do than what you do want to do.
It's so funny because, everything you've said in the last, few minutes that we've been chatting is so identical to how I grew up and how I think even to this day. How old are you, Matt?
38. I just turned 38.
Happy birthday. So I'm 2 years older than you. Prior, a little bit back, I was a police officer for a long time, and I didn't get into this business until 2009, unfortunately. And time goes. I never even thought I was an entrepreneur. Yeah. And I don't even consider myself an entrepreneur. I consider myself a businessman. Yeah. I think entrepreneurs, and this is my own opinion, have all these different ideas and don't know how to organize them. Yeah. I am a businessman because I'm focused on one thing right now. And now, obviously, COVID has made me realize that that's not a good thing. Sure. So I'm definitely refocusing and looking at other options. But even my dad instilled a lot of things that you talked about. You talked about your employees. I mean, my employees are family. And when you said that, dude, truthfully, there are not, and I don't know, maybe it's just our generation, I consider our generation, even though we're, I guess, millennials per se, but I would say that 35 to 40-year-old.
We fall in the spectrum right before that.
Are we?
Yeah, I believe so. I think we're in the weird 8-year bubble there.
Okay, so then
know what the word is.
Okay, yeah, I don't either.
Because we remember the world as it was.
Right. Listen, Matt, I'll take whatever you can give me because I don't want to be called a millennial.
I don't want that title.
No, fuck that shit. But what I will say is that I think what our 35 to 42, which is a 7-8 year, really understand the importance of having a relationship at work. Sure. And I think that when I come to work, everybody that works for me, I want them to feel like they could come through my door. They talk to me like I'm their brother. I'm their, that I'm, some of the girls that work for me, they're like my sisters. It's important because then it's almost like they feel that it's a natural vested interest into the company. Right. And the brand. I mean, one thing I didn't realize until probably about 3 years ago is the identity of a brand.
Sure.
Because, we're kind of like you guys, a little different. We cater to, like you do too, but we cater to, the 1-2%, the rich.
Right.
Tattooing, art, it's been available to every group of people, depending on whether you want low quality to high quality, right? Sure. I mean, sure. We understand that. But your ability to be part of that community and get to know every generational gap between is what makes your kind of business so great, because like you said, it opens doors. Like I mean, from the day that I started working, my first boss, Edwin, said to me, if you leave my company, when you do, the only thing I ask you is you never forget the connections you build, because you're going to need them one day. And I swear to you, to this day, I have those connections, and they're great friends of mine now, and they're mentors of mine, guys that are 20 years older than me. So you've obviously taken, the old school way of what our parents, our dads taught us, our moms taught us, and instilled it into what is today.
Well, the biggest difference for me coming out of what you're saying is I think like our parents and the generation before them,
the
way that they molded greatness, what was like the metaphor of like making a diamond, where like you apply pressure, you know, and a lot of times that pressure, for me, came out of negative energy, and really beat it into you,
Yeah.
And I think that from what I see around me and in New York City and other cities, I think a lot of people are feeling now that, and I feel this in the world in general, is that you can attain that same success, you can attain that same product with love. Yeah. Right. And that's where that family element comes in. I think there's a lot more people who own businesses now. I remember there was an article in, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, probably about 8 or 9 years ago, and it talked about how hipster culture was actually like lifting the economy at the time. Mm-hmm. It was because there were so many people who started to open up small businesses again, and they weren't looking to be rich; they were just looking to be able to take care of their family, maybe have like 1 or 2 employees that they could take care of well, and like live their life. Because there had been so much fluctuation for people, and I think in most people, that's the thing they crave the most, is just kind of, that line. Right. Security, of not having the rug pulled out from under them. Yep. Which what makes what everybody's been going through for the last 5-6 months now so brutal. And even for me, a giant wake-up call is, I think we all are understanding that there's no checks and balances for any of those things at all in this country. Yep. And that's really fucking frightening.
It's fucking scary.
How fast we got to where we are. Right. You're just like, is this fucking real? Did I wake up in like another universe somewhere? Like how is this being able to be said? How is this being able to be done without somebody coming in and being like, whoa, what the fuck are you doing?
Right. Yeah. No, 100%. I think that is such a good point, because I think, I was talking to one of my guys here who's with me, my fleet manager, and we were talking about how the last 3 years, 40% growth year over year. I mean, if you had talked to me 3 years ago and said, Dave, you're going to be a $7.5 million company, I'd have said, you're fucking smoking crack. Yeah. Like, there's no way. I mean, we were slowly growing. And then one morning, we were in Vegas for a show, for our convention show. And I mean, everybody at the show, Matt, you'd have thought that everybody was on coke, because everybody was so excited, having fun, nobody's sleeping, and maybe some were, I don't know. But the fact is that everybody was this like cloud nine, like the industry was at its best, the economy was solid. Nobody, and I can speak for myself. I noticed that there's a decline in business in Asia, because we weren't seeing travel there, but I didn't catch it off guard, because it's January, February is kind of the start of the year for us in business travel again. Sure. But when March 12th came around, 6 days after my fucking 40th birthday, I will never forget waking up and looking at our board for the day, which was our reservation screen, empty. Yeah. And I started seeing emails, cancellations, calls, cancellations, this and that. And it was just like, what the fuck? And not even 1 day later did we basically have to shut down completely. And it's been March 13th. We've not been able to reopen fully. California, as you know, like New York, we haven't been able to do shit. And so we'll talk about that, kind of how you pivoted it. But, in our industry, if nobody travels, there's no business. Sure. So California, like many states, got hit super hard in the beginning. Yeah. But you're right. But what it did make me realize is that, was I standing with both feet planted rather than kind of keep moving? And we decided to just keep moving. And it's been rough, don't get me wrong. But the next thing that I kind of want to bring up is like the idea of like, Okay, so you have these shops. You opened up Manhattan. You moved, got into something bigger. Obviously, you opened up in LA. I know that. How long ago did you open up in LA?
Just this past year, and at this point, we've been closed longer than we were open.
Okay, so then we can.
It took us like a year and a half just to get that shop established, just because there's so much red tape in Los Angeles.
100%. It's California.
If I would have known how difficult opening a business in LA would have been compared to anything else I would have done, I probably never would have done it.
Right. And it's so funny you say that because I have a lot of partners that are in New York and Florida and other states are like, oh, we're going to open up shop in California. I'm like, you do that, and then you're going to tell me how you want to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge that's right around the corner from me.
It's wild.
The worst part about it, and I don't know how New York is. The cost to run the company is more than you're actually going to make because you got to deal with workers' comp. I don't know your business. I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, are the tattooists considered independent contractors?
Independent contractors.
So you get that benefit. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
But for me, all my employees are employees.
Right.
So then I'm paying workers' comp on everybody.
Right.
And so that cost in itself is horrible.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing is, so you opened up LA. When did you open London?
Same thing this past year.
Okay.
And both this past year.
And how is London doing compared to, obviously LA we know, but London, are you seeing anything?
London's great. We opened about a month and a half ago, 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
And that was our official opening. We were ready to open and we're supposed to open like a week before the pandemic hit. And then, the pandemic hit. So, and then we opened and things, I'll say like the shops are busy because people have nothing else to do. We are literally like the only extracurricular activity that is allowed to be open and functioning, and funny enough, we're also really one of the only industries completely prepared for a pandemic because we're all trained in cross-contamination and we're all trained in bloodborne pathogen. We have gloves, we have masks. We've already been doing all of this stuff before the pandemic even hit.
Right.
And it sucks because most governments, they'll lump us in with nail salons,
right,
and beauty places and stuff like that. And it's like, you don't have to know any of the stuff that I have to know.
Right.
I'm performing surgery.
Right.
So, having all of that knowledge was extremely helpful going through the pandemic. I think every time I go to the hospital, I end up correcting a nurse or a doctor, in cross-contamination, over tattoo artists.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
even in my transplant, it was that way.
So how old were you when you had your transplant?
29.
And we don't need to get into the particulars, but obviously it was a life-changing kind of eye-opening. And so I guess you could look at that as a, double-edged sword, right? Like there's the good and the bad of it.
Yes. You go through something like that. There's something that's taken from you that's forever gone.
Right.
But, people know me. I'm a positive thinker. I always have been. I tell people, and this is something I say all the time, I'm thankful for every bad thing that's ever happened to me. I live my life where I'm like, fucking pile it on, buddy. Like, I can take it. Like, I don't fucking care.
Right.
Like, let's do it. And I like taking it for the people around me. I work hard to be that beam of light for people, to be the guy who can put the shit in the back of his head. So even with that, even with the near-death experience, I was like, I walked out of it being, to me, stronger, better, more well-versed at life, and also understanding what the ultimate price was, I felt lucky that I got to see who showed the fuck up when that time came.
Fuck yeah.
And I can say it was nowhere near as many people as I thought it was going to be. And as sad as a statement that is, it's also really fucking eye-opening because any hurdles, any walls I may have created for myself up until that point in my head, sure as fuck were gone by the time I got back to life.
Right.
And
it probably what it did is it shrunk this big group and brought it down to this, which would probably made you realize or helped you get to that next level because now you didn't have to cater to 25 or 30 people.
No.
You catered to 5 people that had your back, whoever they may be, family, friends, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So you said that you and your wife decided you guys opened up a bar? 1 bar, 2 bars? How many bars do you guys have?
No, so my wife is a restaurateur, and
Cool.
she has a restaurant in Richmond, Virginia called Dinamo.
Called what?
Dinamo.
Okay.
Dinamo.
Okay, cool.
It's like a Italian Jewish cuisine. Delicious, up for restaurant of the year every year. They're amazing. She's amazing.
2 of my favorite things, Italian food, and I'm Jewish. Let's do it.
You will love it.
I'm all for it.
You're right in our New York, New Jersey sector.
You're our perfect client, Dave.
What we call the pizza bagel contingent.
There we go. Oh, that's a great idea. Make a good pizza bagel. Oh, let's go.
Right. So we live on the northern Jersey Shore. She had moved up to move with me here in Jersey, New York. Okay. And then we recently, about a year and a half ago, we bought a local pizzeria restaurant, like 10 minutes from our house in Highlands, New Jersey. There's a giant, beautiful, like 15-mile state park right next to us. The ferry is right there. It goes back and forth to Wall Street and 34th Street. Lots of summertime tourism. And she just did what she did in Virginia and did it here. We bought it from this old Italian man who's had it for like 40 years. Wow. He's still in the pizzeria like 3-4 days a week hanging with us.
That's awesome.
We go hunting in the fall. He's like become part of our family. It's been really, really amazing. And we never closed there for the pandemic. My wife has run it through the whole thing. She cut down on staff, was there every day. We were like one of the only restaurants to stay open in the area, and eventually brought in groceries and was just taking care of everybody the best she could.
That's amazing.
As safe as possible. I don't think we had a single exposure in the restaurant or with any of the people working. Just really, really incredible.
And then you said you guys opened up a bar.
So I have 3 bars in Brooklyn with my partner in the tattoo shops, and then another good friend of mine from college who's also an independent bar himself. Okay.
And I mean, I'm assuming you guys are hit a little bit on those, because those
are definitely the hardest situations of them all.
Okay.
New York is just doing nothing for bars and restaurants whatsoever. And at the end of the day, the biggest part of it comes out of every landlord is different. That's really like the end and the beginning of the conversation is what the landlord says. We started off doing to-go stuff. And in the beginning, when there were only so many people doing it, it was good. And then once like everybody decided to open up and do it,
right.
There's only so much money to go around. And on top of that, the flight from New York City has been tremendous.
Really?
I mean, when I drive home every day, it sends me through Midtown Manhattan because it's fucking empty. Because there's just nobody there. And Manhattan is just filled again with homeless and junkies. I watched 2 guys sharing a crack pipe in a bus stop the other day. Like, it's like old Manhattan. Like, it reminds me of my childhood. It's crazy, all of the gentrification that came in, so much of it is just gone.
It's gone.
Construction sites stopped. All these guys that bought buildings in the last few years that paid way too much for them. Mm-hmm. Everything's at a halt now. And crime is up, and the weirdest, strangest, scariest people are back out on the streets. And it's a weird environment in New York right now.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I don't really like to go into politics in the sense of like Democrats, Republicans, that kind of shit. Sure, yeah. I had a really good conversation with a friend of mine, and he said that he had this feeling. He's a businessman that has done very well for himself. He has this theory that all this was to bring the gap between the poor and the rich closer. And which is kind of a weird, and I'm going to try to explain it the best I can. But what he said is that, the rich were really, really rich. They were able to buy those buildings in New York, spend all that kind of money. And this basically stopped them in their tracks. They spent all this money and now they can't get the money back, because now gentrification, everybody who was living there, who was willing to spend that kind of money, will never be able to spend it for the next 5 to 8 years, because they're not going to be able to get back to where they were, right? And so what it's done is it's brought the really rich down slowly, And it's now saying that the guys that are doing the gig economy, the gig stuff, is all starting to get, these little jobs. I mean, obviously Uber and all these kind of things, where they're starting to make money, and they're not paying rent. They're not paying all their credit card bills. They're starting to be able to save this kind of money. So this pandemic was able to bring it was a conspiracy that's bringing the rich, the middle class, everybody kind of closer together, because the economy, and I don't know about you, but I can tell you, under the last 3-4 years, doesn't matter who the president was. I don't care about that. My business was thriving. Like, I've never seen that much money coming into our company.
Sure.
And there has to be something said to the idea that it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but we've basically envisioned this company to be going back to what 2015, 2016 numbers were.
Sure.
Have you seen the same thing for you guys?
Well, I mean, I think the difference is, you said most of your clientele are that one, top 1%, top 2%.
Right.
And I think most of those people have the luxury of sitting still, staying inside, letting time go by. They're not going to put themselves at risk. The pandemic as a whole seems to be a pretty classist disease. It's, wiping out poor people. It's wiping out old people. And in this country, poor people happen to be minorities. So, so it's like, it's hard not to look at that. And from the, the level I exist in, which is definitely more on the streets, more working class, we touch, I think, all sectors of the economy, but my initial instinct would be to say the opposite from what I see.
Okay.
And even what I read, it seems to be, the distribution of wealth from the programs that have been created through this. So much money is just being taken and hoarded. And, the people who have that money that own those buildings, they'll still be able to use government programs to turn them back into low-income housing. I mean, this is the cycle of America, right? This is the cycle of the world. This is the cycle of like every great empire that's fallen and rebuilt itself throughout history,
Right.
Take too much, take, and the bottom falls out,
Right.
At some point, poor people and working class people need to have money to put back into the economy if it's going to balance itself.
Right.
I'd say I've seen a fluctuation over the last 12 years. Money, it always tends to go like this.
Yep.
Certainly, in the last 3-4 years, Trump's America, tax cuts are better for people who make more money. You're going to do better for yourself,
Right.
And we all know that this is a country that, like, the more money you have, the easier it is to operate and make money for yourself. Right. There's no truer American statement than, you need to have money to make money.
100%.
I worked my way up, and it was just kind of keep reinvesting in yourself, keep reinvesting in these ideas and put new things. And the reason for diversifying was because I realized that on my own, I was never going to be able to attain those next levels without partnerships, without friends, without people working with me to attain the same kind of things for themselves, And, like you said early on about, refocusing your energy when it comes to, working just for money and whatnot. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to make money, but I think that I do believe that everybody really only needs a certain amount of it at a certain point.
For sure.
And I think there needs to be a redistribution of wealth in this country enormously, but I also don't think that's very hard to create. You're talking about a country that needs reform in like 20 different sectors. You can put people to work. You can create an economy. You can raise minimum wage. You can do all these things, and that 1% isn't even going to feel it.
Right.
So when you're sitting where I'm sitting, it certainly makes you question, like, are you trying to bust the economy? Are you trying to create a bigger gap between, because I think for about 15 years, 20 years, the conversation's been had since I remember in high school that, like, the middle class was disappearing and the gap was becoming bigger between the rich and the poor. Yep. And in cities, I certainly see it. In the suburbs, everybody just, goes on with their days. Right. They're not affected. But in the cities, you really see it. You see the working class people being pushed further out and further out into the boroughs and into Staten Island and Jersey, and they're commuting and people are making $300 a week and spending 100 of it on a fucking Metro card,
Right.
How do you expect those people to serve you at a certain point? Because that's what cities are turning into with that kind of, differential between wealth.
And I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry, man. I wanted to kind of hit a point that you said is that I do think that there are a lot of ways, and as we're business owners,
Sure.
And obviously we want to have a good paycheck. It doesn't have to be outrageous, but it also is, there are, here in the Bay Area, I can speak for myself, is that I would rather pay people more and pay less to workers' comp.
Sure, 100%.
If the states really wanted to better the people, they need to enforce caps on these things that are making companies not be able to pay their workers more.
Well, I mean, look at insurance right now, right? I mean, I talk to my insurance agent is like a really good friend of mine, and we talk about it all the time because I find insurance fascinating, right? And most people are like, oh, how does insurance work? It's like, basically insurance works like this. When one thing happens to the insurance company, they add that to this, we will never cover this ever again.
Right.
So after this, you will never see disruption of business in an insurance plan ever again.
Right.
Ever again. And the hardest thing as a small business owner is you're like, well, what the fuck do I have all this for if it's not going to do anything for me?
Right.
In the hardest of situations.
Right.
In the worst of situations, when nobody has any business, and we've all been paying into these systems for years and years and years and years, and we're not talking about small amounts, and nobody's getting anything back, not even like, hey, spend $3,000 and come scrub my business down.
Right.
Anything, do anything for the people who are paying your policies.
Right.
And it's just nothing. And we talk about it. It's like, is this going to push a lot of small business owners to just operate without insurance after this? Are people just going to say, fuck it?
I mean, I can tell you in this industry, we're running into, and I don't know, I can't speak for every state. I've heard a lot in the rumbles that the insurance companies are no longer going to be doing, the commercial vehicle, insurance for our industry. We run, there are probably like 2 or 3 that are still like the biggest. I think Philadelphia Lancer, and there's one other one, but they're talking about not going to be around. So what's going to end up happening is, what hurt us, the last 10 years has been the TNCs. Sure. They've been able to skirt the regulations. The people who drive for them, they don't have to have the same insurance we do. So what's going to happen? If we can't get insurance from commercial, we're going to have rogue operations.
Yeah.
And we're going to run a company that is basically black market car service.
Yeah.
And, God forbid you get a crash, your insurance is only going to cover so much.
Yeah. I mean, tattoo is the same way.
Yeah.
There's one company in all of New York City that covers tattoo shops. Only one carrier.
That's crazy.
That's insane. And the funniest thing about it, there's no claims that ever get made out of our industry. Like ever. So
all they're doing is pure profit.
Just pure profit. Pure profit. I've never read or heard a single story of somebody suing a tattoo shop successfully.
It would be really interesting to get that statistic in New York, being that listen, you guys are in a higher risk, obviously something going wrong. So I'm not trying to compare.
Sure.
I'm just saying but our cars do on an average, I would say, let's just say, 400 miles a day, 500 miles a day. And let's be honest, drivers are not as good as they were 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
I'm a commuter. I do comedy routines in my car to myself every day because it's between driving now. I have a father that was the kind of dad that was like, I'm going to teach you to drive on the truck side of the New Jersey Turnpike,
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the difference now to 10 years ago is
insanely different.
Unbelievable.
Add the cell phone to the mix, and it just becomes a fucking joke. But it's becoming that company insurance, workers' comp, everything is really pushing the small businesses away.
Yeah.
And at what point is the government or anybody going to say, wait a second, we cannot be without small businesses?
Yeah.
No matter what anybody says, the big businesses, If small businesses are around, big businesses won't be around that much longer because there's not going to be money to be spent.
Sure.
And
But that's
so,
like, that's the trickle down, right? I mean,
right,
that's the trickle down of too many hands, too many middlemen trying to collect off of everything that exists.
right,
And you know, big business is mixed with politics so much that they're not going to go into their own pockets.
right.
Why rich people don't pay taxes. It's why companies like Amazon don't pay all these taxes. It's why, you know, like,
Yep.
so where do you go? You start knocking on my door, you
Right.
know?
Oh.
I mean, in New York City, when we first opened, there were people who went door to door to walk in your business just to see, hey, are you doing what you say you're doing? Oh, if not, cool, here's a fine. My accountants tell me all the time they have clients who just pay. There's all these schemes out there where companies just mail these fake government letters to companies, being like, "Hey, you owe $10,000."
Oh, yeah.
And people just pay it because
They don't want the trouble.
anybody looking at their business or coming in that they'd rather just lose 10 grand. You know,
It is listen, we could beat this down all day long, but I think one thing that I wanted people to get out of your story was really the positivity that you come with.
Sure.
I mean, do you feel that since the pandemic, and I know obviously you guys have your hands in a lot of things, obviously your wife and you doing amazing things with your restaurants that's open still. Have you ever felt, or have you felt during these times, even though how positive you are like I am, I can tell you the last couple of weeks, I've felt like a backpack of rocks were on me.
Yeah.
And where the first 2-3 months, I was like, okay, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. And as time gone on, it obviously it takes a toll. Have you been feeling that? Or have you just said, you know what, fuck, I got to get through this. I have no choice. I'm going to stay positive, even if
For me, I feel like there's too many people relying on me not, you know, I always joke, like, my need to make money has always come out of necessity. Mm-hmm. I just have a family that's always had lots of health problems. You know, my parents live with us. You know, I have had health problems. My sister's had health problems. You know, it's like, you know, so I feel like I've always felt very close to the people who work with me in that way, to where I want them to feel protected and safe. And same thing, you know, since we reopened the tattoo shops up in the beginning of July, for me, like, that's the biggest thing I feel like I can do as an owner, is just make sure everybody around me feels safe and feels positive. You know, you know, when I became a father, it made running businesses easier because I just started to come at everything like a dad, you know? And you know, when people feel good, even when they know everything around them is garbage, it helps, you know, and it makes people happier, and it makes people happier at work, you know, because, you know, the thing I keep telling people is, listen, this is going to come to an end. So like, take a few lanes, keep your head down, just stay focused.
Right.
You know, the thing financially is, this is the time where there's like the most opportunity, you know, because there, you know, just like in 2008 when the market crashed, at the end of this, we're going to be starting at hopefully a nice growth period,
right?
Economically, you know, and it's hard to feel good about any success when you know so many people are out there hurting and losing their jobs and not being able to take care of their families, you know. And keeping, you know, perspective going forward to me is like a very important thing, you know. And I make a huge effort to try to financially educate people and teach people, because, you know, I always say people throw the word democracy around a lot more than they throw the word capitalism around. And it's like, you forget that we live in a capitalist country. And I always say, you can get every kind of education, but what's the one they don't give you? A financial one. And that's for a reason. So you need to go out and you need to learn some things. You don't have to learn everything, but there's so many things that you can do for yourself. There's so many holes in the system. There's so many things that you can be active about that would help you. That would help you financially. That would help your family financially. It's just about spending the time doing them. Right. And you know, the thing with the internet, right? It's like, if you're not using it to become a bigger moron, you can actually use it to become a smarter person. You know, there's tons of information. There's tons, you know, like, I use YouTube to teach myself shit all the time. You know, I look stuff up all the time. I try to use it as the tool that it's meant to be used for, you know,
Right.
And in doing so, I try to bring that positivity to all the businesses, because, a lot of these are 20 to 30-year-old somethings who just have no fucking idea what the future holds for them.
Yeah.
And they can't see the world through all the stuff that's affecting them every day, the pandemic, politics, social unjust in the streets, all these different things that are going on that make it very hard to focus on even wanting to take care of yourself.
Right. Right.
So I just think, that positive note and trying to open up right now is like an opportunistic time to, don't sit back at home.
Yep.
Don't sit on the couch and wait this thing up. Like, use this time, use this pause
right.
in like society to create a better situation for yourself.
Right.
There's various ways to do it. You just have to do it. You know?
Most definitely. And I think it's really important. Some of the points you made in this statement is that, if we sit back and just wait, I can tell you that the first month I sat back and I waited because I wanted to see what was going to happen. And, then we started, our private aviation side and that, slowly moving. I mean, it's obviously nobody's flying. It's starting to, but what it's opened up for us is, better communication with our clients. We're a service business, like I told you to these, and they could sit back and wait.
Right.
But now they know we're here to stay and we're here to, but when it comes to the employees, I've opened up another division of our company that they're going to be doing Amazon deliveries.
Right.
And they're looking at me like, why would you go invest your own money to do this? And I said, because if I do this for you, one, it's coming back to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to be an owner of another company, so I'm going to be making money over here. But that means that I'm out here struggling for you too. It's not just me. Listen, I can make $1 million a year if I wanted to. If really that's really the lifestyle I wanted, but that's not the lifestyle I live. Like, I think you and I are very much alike, Matt, where we're just like, we just want to be happy. It doesn't have to be a lot. I don't have to, I wear t-shirts and shorts all day long. I mean, the only thing I spend on are my beard cuts and my tattoos. That's pretty much all it is. And so for me, I just feel like the more I put into my team and being like you positive, even my down days. And I mean, I deal with some personal stuff too, that have made it harder to kind of get out of that hole. But I feel like when I'm positive, I try to push everybody around us. And, it's really easy to just say, okay, well, they need to figure it out. I got to worry about the company. Rather than saying, hey, I'm trying my best to do what's best for the company so that we don't have to see anybody go. And then they figure out that, fuck, what can we do? What can we do to, I have one dispatcher who calls me every weekend and says, hey, I have a new client that wants to talk to us. Cool. And they know that the more people that come in, the longer I could hold them on.
Sure.
Eventually we're going to have real conversations, but we've sustained, we've furloughed some due to, unemployment being so high. They're like, well, why don't we just furlough to save the company? But we haven't, we let go of one person fully.
Yeah.
And so, I think that what a lot of people could take from this, chat is one, positivity. Find a way to pivot yourself. Don't worry about, just your company, but pivot yourself and really look at how you are dealing with your day to day.
Well, it's why you're the owner, right?
Right.
I tell my guys all the time, my problems aren't your problems.
Right.
I would be unfair of me to try to put them on you,
Yep.
You have your mode here, I have my mode,
Right. Well, I mean, Matt, dude, it's so funny because I had a podcast last week with a gentleman named Simon, who after the call, or even before the call, I knew right away, this is a dude that's going to be a part of my network.
Yeah.
And Matt, I think you're a down ass dude. I think you're doing some really good stuff out there. When LA opens up, I may go hit it up and add another piece just to say that I did it. When New York opens up again, I'll come visit. But, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been a great chat. I hope that people could take out of this that there's hope. and, you know, you find hope in different avenues, right?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, one day at a time and just keep moving forward. This is going to come in like everything else. And, you know, we're going to figure out another way, you know. And I really do believe that. I really believe we'll all bounce back in one way or another.
Right, right. I appreciate it. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us on The Blind Spot. It was a pleasure chatting with you. You know, health to you, your family, your team, a lot of prosperity. I know 2020 sucked for a lot of people, but it will, once it's over, we'll move on and we'll laugh about it later. And hopefully we can chat soon.
I hope so. Thanks,
All right,
Dave.
dude. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day.
You too. Take care.
Thanks everybody for watching the show. I'm going to put a link to all Matt's different endeavors so you can follow him on Facebook, Instagram. He's a solid dude and a good business guy. And so, you know, I will put everything below on the links. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, guys.